views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good morning, everyone. So, the deputy will not be here today, as you can see. She is actually at the City Planning Commission. They're having the vote on the hearing on the jails. So she will be testifying on behalf of the borough president. So you have me. So I just want to start by saying that I want to thank you, everybody, for accommodating the change in the date. I really appreciate that. There was a vote item that we thought we were going to have on the agenda, and then it was not required at this time. So moving forward, I'm going to start with pursuant to Chapter 4, Section 85, and in Chapter 69, Section 2706 of the New York City Charter, a joint meeting of the Bronx Borough Service Cabinet and the Bronx Borough Board will take place on Wednesday, July 10th, starting at 9:30 at 851 Grand Concourse Room 819. And as usual, we'll start with introductions. My name is Marisol Halpern. I am the Director of Borough Operations for the Borough President.
Tom Lucchini, Director of Community Boards.
I'm Greg Faulkner, Councilman, member of the Borough Chief of Staff.
James Garcia, Director of Constituent Services, Councilman President.
Cam Burrow, I'm the Chief's Officer.
Bill Hall, Chair of the Board.
George, Community Board of Law.
Russo, Chair of Board of Mac, Community Board Technician Manager.
Rosemary Ginty, Chair of Board 8. Chair Bannon, District Manager, Committee Board 8.
Emmanuel Martinez, Chair of Board 7. Good morning, all. I'm Ken Brown. I'm the District Manager of Board 5.
Kathleen Saunders, Chair of Board 4.
Ryan Zappa, MTA. Bernie Slater, MTA.
Jackson Carter,
Sam Goodman, Chairman Planning,
Hello. Introduce yourself, please.
He works for it.
Yeah. Ma'am? Thank you all. The first item that we have on the agenda is the Bronx Bus Redesign. I'm going to remind everybody to please talk into the mics when you have your comments and questions so that BronxNet could record them properly.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. And thank you once again for allowing us to continue this journey with you. As many of you know, we have started the Fast Forward Bronx Bus Network project. We started it last year, and many of you have been on our journey from introducing it to the community boards and the elected officials, from having workshops, for having open houses, we were here to present all of that to you. We recently was here a couple of months ago to show you the existing condition report, and thank you for inviting us to coming to your community boards to share that with your constituents. And as many of you have participated in the open houses, and what we did at the open houses is to show you what we're going to show you today, which is the draft plan. Many of you are aware that this is a year-long project. We're a little bit more than halfway through. You probably recognize these gentlemen. They were here the last time to present the existing condition report. That's Ryan and Dorian. And I'm going to have those gentlemen start going through. Hopefully all of you have taken a copy of these. If not, they're at the desk, so you'll be able to go through the presentation with Ryan and Dorian. Ryan?
Hello, good morning. Good morning. Yeah, I can use this one. Hello? Hello? Sorry. Go ahead. All right, good morning. My name is Ryan Zepp, and I'm a senior transportation planner with BMTA on the Bronx Bus Redesign project. And I'll be going over, as Jackie said, what we've been doing with redesign and where we're at, which is the draft plan that we just released at the end of May. So just to recap, we'll talk about why are we doing redesign? So our customers asked us to take a fresh look at bus service in the Bronx, make improvements that provide them shorter travel times, which means less time waiting and wondering for the buses, improve bus speeds, and improve service reliability. Also, we've been seeing a ridership decline over the past several years. Since 2016, the decline is due mainly to slower bus speeds, modal shifts to other transportation, subway and TNCs, and also demographic shifts. And then another reason to redesign is the central business district tolling, which is the congestion pricing that was approved this year. The implementation of congestion pricing will be an effective way to reduce congestion within the city, and so this is an ideal time to start taking a second look at the Bronx bus network. So how are we redesigning the Bronx bus network? These are sort of our bus network redesign strategies that we're using. So we are looking at the system as a whole and individual routes, and we have provided in the plan ideas for more direct routings, where we are streamlining circuitous routes. Bus routes that are straight and direct tend to be more reliable and faster. Also, a bus stop balancing, which is a comprehensive look at all of the bus stops in the borough. The spacing in the Bronx and in New York City in general between stops is some of the closest together in the entire country. So we took a look at all of the bus stops in the Bronx individually and evaluated them with several different criteria to see if we could take a couple out so that the bus doesn't have to stop as often and can travel a little bit faster through the corridor. Another strategy is improving connections. So the Bronx network redesign can help integrate the bus network, ensure it provides increased freedom to customers through better connections, reliability, and frequent service. We heard from customers that we need to improve east and west connections, improve connections to the subway lines, and improve crosstown access to Manhattan. And lastly, we're working with NYC DOT to better our streets so that our bus network redesign plan will work well in conjunction with bus priority measures. NYC DOT is currently working on evaluating several different corridors in the Bronx, and we're working with them to determine which ones would be the best ones to provide priority on so that we can improve the bus network with the bus network redesign. So now we'll go over some of the regular bus service improvements. This is the local, limited, and select bus service. And this is what's in the draft plan. If you take a look at the draft plan, these routes, these 20 routes that you see here are the ones that we've proposed routing and or frequency changes to. We'll go over those in a little bit of detail in a moment. We've also proposed to remove 400 out of the 2,225 stops in the Bronx, which would improve bus spacing from every 882 feet on average to every 1,132 feet. This is between bus stops. And I'd also like to reiterate that this is a draft plan, and we've been going out to the public, we've been listening to the public, we want to hear from the public about what they think about the draft plan, and we're taking that feedback and using it to inform our final plan. So many of our individual route proposals work together and can be viewed at more of a neighborhood level. So I'll go over those right now. So first, the Central Bronx, and these are east-west connections in the Central Bronx. A focus of the draft plan is to create more direct east-west routes. And so some of these, actually all of these proposals here kind of work together. The first I'll talk about briefly is the BX6 SBS, which we're proposing to bring across Story Avenue into Soundview instead of down to Hunts Point. The BX6 local would still go down to Hunts Point. This would make service more direct and give a faster crosstown connection for those in Soundview. We also are proposing to reroute the BX36 to stay on East Tremont Avenue. As you may know, the BX36 is a very high ridership route, but it's also a very poor performing route as far as speed and reliability goes. So we've implemented some of these, or we're proposing to implement some of these network redesign principles that I talked about, straightening the route and having less turns so that the bus can make its crosstown trip faster and serve customers better. So what this does is it takes service off of East 180th Street, which we are proposing to replace with the BX40, which is currently on East Tremont. So those two will switch in that section, or would switch in that section. And BX40 customers would have a new connection to ADA accessible station at East 180th Street on the 2-5 train. Continuing on, the BX36 would also take service off of East 174th, so we're proposing to reroute the BX11 east from where it is currently onto East 174th to connect to Park Chester. And in order to replace the service that change is affecting in the area around West Farms Road, we're proposing to extend the BX35. Now we'll talk about the Highbridge area. We're proposing to streamline the BX11 in Highbridge. Currently the BX11 goes, if you're going towards Manhattan, it makes sort of a circuitous route down Shakespeare and then up Ogden and down Plimpton. We're proposing to bring it right on the Ed L. Grant Highway instead to get a faster trip into Manhattan. And that service on Shakespeare would be replaced by an extended BX18, which would become a circulator that would circulate both counterclockwise and clockwise. And the frequency would also be increased on the BX18 to match that. And those customers would also have the option of using the BX13, which we're also increasing frequency on, and the BX35. In Norwood, we're proposing to discontinue BX34 service along Bainbridge and Valentine. That route would be moved to Webster Avenue, which is more conducive to bus travel because it's a wider street. And it's where we have existing bus lanes, and it's where our current BX41 SBS route is. And in order to maintain service on Bainbridge Avenue, the BX28 would be rerouted, as you can see there. In Co-op City, many of the bus routes try to achieve two objectives at once. One is serving as a circulator through the neighborhood, and the other is serving as a connector to subway lines and other bus routes in the Northeast Bronx. What this does is kind of create a pretty complex network in Co-op City that can be a little bit confusing, and also it's duplicative service, so that service could be potentially reallocated on the routes that are exiting out of Co-op City in order to provide higher frequency. The MTA's 2014 study of Co-op City bus service found that the majority of residents in Co-op City are traveling outside for work and for shopping. And these riders are best served by bus routes that travel quickly out of Co-op City without making circuitous trips around all the sections. So what we've proposed in the draft plan, and again, this is a draft, is to have a circulator service, which currently is the BX23, that would serve as the primary circulator around the area of Co-op City, and would have increased frequency, a significant increase in frequency, I should say, and that route would serve as a feeder to all of the other routes that exit Co-op City. All of the other routes, the BX 26, 28, 29, 30, and Q50 would serve certain sort of connection points for the BX 23 to feed into, and we are also not proposing to have another transfer, a third transfer for folks that would incur another transfer, so they wouldn't need to pay for that. Next, we'll talk about Country Club and Locust Point. So we're proposing to shorten the BX8, moving its southern terminal to Layton and Dean, and the BX24 would take over that southern portion of the BX8. We've also proposed to streamline the BX24 through Country Club, so it would be going straight down Stadium instead of sort of meandering through the neighborhood. The majority of customers on the BX8 are traveling north of the point where you can see it currently goes, and this would improve reliability on that route. And for 125th Street around Harlem area, we've currently got two Bronx routes that serve 125th, the BX15 and the M100, which is out of a Bronx depot. As you know, 125th Street is very congested, and it is often the source of reliability issues on these routes. These routes tend to perform a little bit better on their north-south sections, but once they get to 125th, it really kind of bogs them down. So we're proposing to split the two routes into three different routes, really, or I should say the BX15 we're proposing to split into two routes, and we're proposing to take the M100 off of 125th. The BX15 would still travel from Fordham down, but it would stop at the hub, and then we would have a new route called the M125, which would travel from the hub across 125th Street into the west side of Manhattan, and that route would match the frequency of the two routes that are currently there. We are hoping that this would improve reliability and performance on the M100 and the BX15, while also providing service on 125th. And next we'll go through the express bus proposals. So in Riverdale, we've got the BXM2. We're proposing to discontinue service on Riverdale Avenue and reroute to operate via Inwood to the Henry Hudson Parkway and serve West Midtown. And what this does is it avoids slow speeds on the Major Deegan Expressway. The bus spends less time on local Manhattan streets, and customers using stops south of West 72nd Street would have a faster trip as buses on the west side to 179th Street instead of traveling on the east side and crossing through Central Park. For the BXM18 in Riverdale, we are streamlining the route in an effort to slow speeds, to avoid slow speeds, and regular traffic delays on the Major Deegan. Service would be rerouted to operate via Inwood to the Henry Hudson Parkway, then to serve Riverside Drive, and Hudson Yards and downtown. The BXM4, we have proposed to extend its northern terminal further east to East 241st Street and White Plains Road to serve former BXM11 riders. And we've also proposed to discontinue service along Bainbridge Avenue and Grand Concourse. This would reduce, we would reduce service to operate peak hour and peak direction only, but this would hopefully speed up the bus. Next is the BXM5, which is a new route, formerly the BXM11. The BXM5 would be rerouted to operate from East 233rd Street to Bronxwood Avenue. Service would be discontinued along White Plains Road under the subway, and the name would be changed to BXM5. In Williamsbridge and Morris Park, the BXM10 would be rerouted for off-peak service and weekend service. The proposed routing would operate via Hugh Grant Circle to serve current BXM6 customers that will no longer have off-peak and weekend service. In Co-op City, we've proposed a new route we're calling the BXM17 that would provide direct service from Co-op City to Lower Manhattan, which doesn't currently exist. The proposed route would avoid congested streets in the Bronx and Manhattan and would travel via Queens to the FDR and end at Water Street. And that's it for the proposed changes, and Jackie here will talk about what's next.
Thank you, Brian. You heard, you can see on this page, we've had the open houses. Once again, I want to thank every last one of you who came out, because as we know, there have been days in which it was raining, but your constituents came out. And you should personally feel very proud that they came out, because this is their borough, these are their concerns. You're going to see on the next slide, you're going to see that right now, our timeline. So between now and the end of this month, many of you have been sending me your questions and your concerns of what you've been receiving from your constituents. You need to continue to send them to me. You can send them via email. You can see that on the last page, which we're not going to change the slide, you can see on the last page, they can, your constituents who would like to do it online, they can do a survey. There is a link there for comments. We need to have these comments in by the end of this month, by July, the end of this month. You have these concerns, you have these questions, you need to start emailing me. If you want to mail it to me, or you have my email, you all have my address. You need to get this data to us as quick as possible, because as you heard Brian say throughout the whole presentation, this is a draft plan. This is a draft plan. And if you want your constituents to be heard, you need to get this information to us, because this is going to give them the opportunity of going through all of the comments that we received. And we have so far received thousands of comments. So I can tell you that the Bronx has been busy. Thousands of comments. They have to be able to go through this, because as you can see, according to the timeline, they gotta have that draft plan out in September. You have the comments, you have the concerns. I need to start seeing this information sent to me so that these gentlemen can do their work. And again, you came out to the open houses, we truly appreciate it. We heard everything that your constituents have said. And Marisol, it's back to you.
So I would actually like to ask you to put the last slide up, because this is being broadcast, and if you want people to provide the answers and questions that you have, they need to hear, they need to see that website. obviously, we have several concerns with the changes that are being proposed. The office has shared with Transit some of the issues that they have with the removal of stops. There's changes that we're concerned about with some of the routes. One that comes to mind is the BXM4. We received thousands of calls about that one, and I'll let everybody share their individual concerns, but the other issue that we've also heard from is the 3 fare zones that are being created for a lot of these residents, that they feel that it's unnecessary when there is already an existing route that is providing the service to them. I understand the need for reliability and shorter distances, but these residents have serious concerns as to how they're going to manage this new system, given the issue of ADA compliance that exists throughout the system. So I'll open it up to any questions and concerns. Mr. Hall?
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. Hi, Bill Hall, Ward 12. I have 2 concerns. In my district, the 38 bus is going to be discontinued. It's proposed to be discontinued. Am I correct?
Along Bainbridge Avenue?
Yes. That's okay. On Gun Hill Road, we have a large population. That's a hub for the 41 bus as well. We have a population going to Montefiore Medical Center from Gun Hill. We have 2 Gun Hill Road stations, and it's a major hub with a large population. So my question is, if you discontinue the 38, how will that impact the 28? Are you going to increase the number of 28 buses, or how is that going to work out? And I mean, if you look at both 38 and 28 buses, they're always full to capacity. So I'm just concerned about that cancellation. The other issue I have is the BX11. I understand you're trying to reduce duplication, but if you have somebody 241st Street that wants to go to Manhattan and doesn't want to take the train, how's that going to work in terms of the BX11, the adjustment there? Those are my 2 questions. Thank you.
Yeah, so first the BX 2838 question. The proposed discontinuation of the 38 would, all of the service from the 38 would be added to the 28. So you would have the same level of service on Gun Hill Road that there is today, if not more. So that would definitely not, we wouldn't want to underserve customers there. But we're also looking at other options for Co-op City at this point for the final plan. The BX11, your question about, was it going into Manhattan from the Highbridge area?
Well, I'm concerned about the population from 241st Street and Gun Hill Road that wants to catch that bus and go
BXM,
downtown.
the
11,
the express
bus. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're concerned about the population below that?
Yeah. In other words, I believe the way I read it, you're going to be canceling. The route's going to change. It won't be a route from Gun Hill.
Right. We've proposed in the draft plan to extend the route in the northern portion, but also not to have it on Grand Concourse. But we're also reevaluating that as well because we've heard a lot of comments from the public on that.
Ward 7. Can you speak into the mic, please?
So in my district, in the Norwood section, it looks like you guys are going to discontinue the Bainbridge Valentine route for the BX34. We have a very big senior center serving gardens along that route. A lot of them depend on it to go to Montefiore and to visit family or in Co-op City. What are you guys doing to address that? Because that's a very big, important block for us.
Yeah, so that we've proposed to cover some of that section with the changed routing on the BX 28, and the portion of the BX 34 that's now on Webster is about a two block walk away from where it is on Bainbridge and Valentine. Also, Grand Concourse is about a 2 block away. So we're trying to accommodate customers there, but we're hearing comments as well.
Matthew?
Thank you. Matthew Cruz, Board 10. I just have a question with regard to the BX42 traveling down Balcom Avenue. Parts of Balcom Avenue, as you know, are probably a closed street. And I'm wondering if any survey was conducted by the MTA for the residents to ask if they wanted the bus line to travel down their roadways, because they're used to no traffic because most of the roadway is closed. And I do have a follow-up question as well.
We did not conduct a survey.
Okay, so they're going to be opposed to it. I'm just going to let you guys know.
Yeah, since this is a draft plan,
sure.
You know, things can change. We did not conduct a survey. That's something we could potentially do if this change does go through.
I'd recommend it. And in fact, Board 10 had asked several years now to open the street so it could have sidewalks and be a normal roadway. But DOT has not maintained, or Parks hasn't really entertained the idea. So I wanted to let you guys know of that roadblock.
Yeah, we're aware of the roadblock. Oh, sure, yeah.
Use the mic.
So I'm Teresa Cruz from DOT Bronx Borough Commissioner's Office, and I can let you know that that's something that we're currently evaluating.
Cool. Good news. I know, right?
And your follow-up?
Good save.
And your follow-up? Did you have a follow-up?
Yes. My next question is I want to reiterate that Country Club and Spencer Estates are unhappy with the Stadium Avenue roadway. My understanding is that about a decade ago, I was about maybe 15 at the time, then Councilman Vaca stopped this idea. I don't know if he will come back to stop it again, but he has indicated to me, as well as his residents and those who live out there with him, that this is something that they're opposed to. And lastly, for Co-op City, I take it from the meeting that they had a couple weeks ago that they were not pleased with much of the services or cutbacks as what they consider in Co-op City. So I'd love for you guys to at least come back to the community board, and at least we can go back to the joint board and how we can service Co-op City better. And thank you again for extending the BXM, the express bus service to Manhattan from Co-op City. That's a great help, but of course I think we need to reconsider what's happening with the BX23, I believe, in Co-op City. So I'd love for you guys to come back and talk to us about it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I had a chance to attend the meeting at NTA, so some of the comments I'm going to make are just kind of a follow-up to those comments about the absence of some of the buses that service the Northwest Bronx, that there hasn't been a lot of attention, like, 32 and some of those lines, there really hasn't been a lot of attention, and whether those could be included. I assume some of the comments came up in some of the open houses about some of the improvements needed in those lines. So then my next question is there any way to get a summary of the comments that came out of the open houses? Is that going to be made available?
Yeah, well, eventually we'll... Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah,
I'm Dorian Sladen. I'm the director for Network Redesign at MTA. So eventually, yes, we're going to summarize all those comments, and they will be available for the public to see.
Do you have any timetable as to when we could...
As I said, because we're still collecting them throughout this whole entire month of July, and you're going to need them at least the rest of the summer to evaluate, and I said we got thousands.
But I'm talking about the public hearings.
There will be a public hearing, before anything's actually implemented, but that's much later in this process.
No. So the comments will be made available.
Comments will be made available.
Thank you.
Will they be available before the final draft plan? I don't know. Before the final plan?
Not before the final plan, it'll be after that, but part of the public hearing process, then we will share all comments that we receive.
Okay, so just for clarification, the final plan is coming out in September?
Yeah.
George?
So, thank you and good morning. My concern when you first rolled this out, maybe a year or several months ago, was the reduction of services. Every time there's a conversation about a redesign or creating efficiencies, it's usually a reduction in services for people in the Bronx. Now that you have rolled this out, I'm a Co-op City resident, but I am the district manager for Community Board 12. And I couldn't live in my house if I didn't raise all the issues that were raised about the Co-op City lines. I have 2 children that go to public schools that would have to make 3 transfers just to get to their public schools, and their schools are fairly close. One goes to Spelman, the other one goes to Mount. the ending of the 30 line at Dreiser Loop is really a disservice to the people of Co-op City, especially those that live in Section 5. My other concern is there was an article yesterday or the day before in AM New York that was talking about traffic fatalities and the rise in traffic fatalities. Now, that has nothing to do with this, but in the study or in that article, they talked about the increase in the number of vehicles on the street. They talked about the increase in the population. My district alone has several new housing starts in the last 3 months. My district in the next 3 years will look a lot more different and a lot more crowded than it does today. And the fact that you're removing services like my chairman raised only heightens my concern. I understand that we have 2 elevated track lines, but for many reasons, people in the Bronx don't need to take the train because the trains go north-south. We need more east-west connections. There is still no bus that goes through the north from Riverdale to Co-op City. It's as simple as that. And I work on White Plains Road and 229th Street. I would have to take 3 different buses in order to get to my job, so I drive. And especially in a city that is trying to reduce traffic fatalities by reducing the number of people who use vehicles, I don't understand this bus redesign, because you're cutting services. You should be increasing services. You should be talking about how do we add new transit lines. But here we are talking about cutting services for a working class community that is the Bronx, and that's it. I mean, all you're going to do is drive more people to purchase their own cars and travel via vehicle, because this doesn't do anything for the Bronx. I mean, for example, the express bus that you now take from Co-op City and you run it through Queens, I mean, have you seen the traffic on the highway? I mean, I don't understand why you're running it through the BQE or whatever it is to get to lower Manhattan when you have other buses, express buses, that travel the same route. I mean, you make it ridiculous. And we now have new ferry lines that are going to be coming online. What are the connections to there? Why are we not talking about increasing bus services, for example, from Co-op City to Throgsnack Ferry Point Park, that will connect people to that? Because right now, to take my wife to the ferry in Soundview is ridiculous as well.
Okay.
So you have a community that is thirsting for more transit alternatives, yet here we are with a Bronx Bus Network redesign that all it does is cut services. And I think again, I don't want to throw this, I'm not an elected official, but there's no advocacy on this, Governor Cuomo is in charge of the MTA, and this is his response to his friends in the Bronx.
So
we're going to cut service. I mean, that's ridiculous.
So George.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's try to get some answers for you without it getting political.
Listen, it is where it is.
No, we appreciate what you just said, and we're going to take all of that in. Thank you.
Hello. Hello. Pardon me.
Go ahead.
No, I didn't know it was that loud. Hello. So I have a question about Highbridge and the proposed changes to the 11 bus. Currently, the 11, the 13, and the 18 service the Highbridge area. The 13 and the 18 are terrible, like abysmal. Like, we've actually requested more 13 buses because of such a backup. And for the 18 bus, on average, people wait 30 to 40 minutes for a bus. So you've noted that you'll increase service. What does that actually mean? Does that mean we're going to be putting more buses out to replace the lack of the 11 bus? Because the 11 is currently the only reliable bus in Highbridge, and we do have a high senior population in that area. So we're just wondering, what do they do? The people that aren't heading to Manhattan, the people that do just want to get around their neighborhood and do have trouble walking around and moving around. So what does the increase in ridership actually look like in terms of what you guys are planning to do? Is it putting more buses on the street? Are you increasing the frequency that buses are running? What's that look like?
Yeah, so we propose to increase the frequency of the BX 13 to 8 minutes or better all day, which would be from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. So during that time period, the bus would come at least every 8 minutes, and oftentimes now it doesn't come that often, especially during the midday. So we would increase service in that, and then also based on the ridership increase, we would potentially increase service in the peak times. And then the BEX 18, currently, as you know, it's a pretty low ridership, low performing route, low frequency. I think it's every 30 minutes. We would propose to greatly increase the frequency on that as well, especially during peak times. And that route would serve as sort of the circulator for people in Highbridge. The folks on Shakespeare would still have an option to get to the 4 train and the BD train with the BX18, and then they would have the option of getting into Manhattan. They would have the option of taking the BX35 or the BX13.
So that means adding more buses? Is that what?
Was that?
That's what he was asking. Are you adding more buses to those lines?
Yes. Yeah, that's the proposal.
Thank you.
Before we take another question, my colleagues wanted to address District Manager Community Board 12, George's comment in regards to reduction of service. Gentlemen?
Yeah, we were just going to say that this plan is cost neutral. So this plan is cost neutral, so even if we are redesigning routes and changing the structure of the routes, as Ryan just alluded to, we're adding frequency on certain routes, and so this is a cost neutral. So we're not actually cutting the cost for the Bronx. It's going to be the same. It's a cost neutral proposal.
Go ahead, Marisol.
I just wanted to make another point. Community boards don't meet during July and August, and I know you said that we had till the end of July to make the comments to you. Is there any way we could extend that to September so we could have at least another meeting?
They need time to be able to analyze all of those comments we received.
It's just
kind of, because we've had these, we had all the open houses in June, we were receiving a lot more. It's up to you all. What do you want to do?
In order to get a plan out by September, we really need to cut it off at the end of July. So the one thing that we haven't talked about, so for the rest of this month in July, I think mostly on Thursdays and Fridays, we'll be out at various locations doing some on-street engagement. So we'll be out there, we'll have some iPads that people can talk to an expert. Jackie will have the details, and I know she's going to send it out to everyone once she has this final schedule. But that'll be another opportunity for people to come directly and to submit their feedback, to fill out a comment card, whatever, and to talk to an expert if they couldn't make it to the open houses that we had.
I just want to
I'll be sending out that information today.
I just want to ensure that we have the maximum participation, and the summer is always not a good time because we have that hiatus between June and September. So just want to make that point.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Brown?
I just have a question, please. Help me to understand the discontinuance of the express bus along the Grand Concourse, especially within this district. We have a development, the growth of apartments and the influx of people that will be coming into this area. How could you conceivably discontinue that service along the Grand Concourse? We have multiple housing that's being developed in this area. And I don't quite understand how the express bus discontinuing the Grand Concourse, where does that fit, or even the current people that are here? Where do you get off to get to like 161st Street on the Grand Concourse with the express bus?
The original thinking behind the proposal was that the Grand Concourse does have a decent amount of service as far as local buses and subway goes. But that being said, we have heard a lot of comments from the public about the BXM4, and we're taking a second look at it.
Yeah, because it certainly does not accommodate the growth within this area, and that needs to be addressed.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
Thank you. This is certainly comprehensive, except I don't see any mention made of the 32 here. A perennial concern of my constituency is that there's a significant difficulty getting down Jerome Avenue to 161st. The number 4 train line serves Jerome Avenue, but there's no ADA accessible train stop through the length of my district. So is there any consideration to, one, add service and capacity to the 32, because you can easily wait half an hour for a bus? 2, how do you recommend people to get down to 161st Street throughout the length of Jerome that doesn't have an ADA accessible train, and the bus, 32, turns off of Jerome?
Yeah, I'd say that we can definitely take a second look at the BX 32 to see if we can make improvements there, and then also improvements along Jerome where you don't have a bus route.
Is that all? Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank
for
you
the
very much.
presentation. We look forward to hearing what the changes are moving
Absolutely,
forward.
and please look for the on-site engagement locations. I'll be sending that out to the community boards and the elected officials as soon as I get back to the office.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is, and I'm hoping that she's here. It's an overview of the mayor's office for Nightlife. And we have Ariel Palace, the Senior Executive Director. We're going to give her a few minutes to set up. So if you guys want to just get coffee while she's doing that.
Right, the nightmare.
I feel so far.
It is. You would just see.
I want to give everyone a minute to transition. Hello, everyone. Before I get started, I'm just going to play a brief 3-minute introductory video about the Office of Nightlife that we put together.
Get on the train.
It's mostly chronicling the 5-borough listening tour that we went on when we first started.
Okay.
Can you make it louder?
And then what about the jail?
The Office of Nightlife was established to ensure that nightlife works for all New Yorkers. We are here to work together with everyone to find a common ground so that we can coexist and thrive.
We are the city that never sleeps. And in order to protect New York City's nightlife, we had to value it and create an entity that was going to support it.
It's important for our quality of life, for our neighborhoods, for people's livelihoods, and most importantly, for our city's economic health.
We want to be supportive to small businesses, and we'll continue to push to make sure that it is the city that we can open up your business and run it as efficiently as possible.
The follow-up is very important to us now. We're trying to change that philosophy. We want the conversation to be meaningful, lasting, and proactive.
What can we do as a group to help secure safe spaces where residents are not being disturbed by noise and where we can have a thriving nightlife that doesn't disturb anyone?
We attract a lot of creatives and a lot of people who are LGBT, QT, POC specifically, because it's a safe space for them.
I live in the Village. And I've been involved in these issues for about 15 years when my block started changing from shoe stores to bars. We built a collaborative thing. We didn't take a dig in our heels approach, and we've been a success story.
Nightlife is where people come to life, where they gather to create, to celebrate, to fall in love, and to let go. We want to ensure safety and quality of life for everyone and to enable creativity and culture to thrive. The one thing we can all agree upon is that we all love New York, and we all want a vibrant and livable city. And although there are many perspectives on how we may get there, what is most important is that we do. And through coordination, communication, and cooperation, I believe we will. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
Working for you.
So yes, hi everyone. Sorry. That video was of our 5-borough listening tour that we launched when the office was first established last year. And basically it was an introduction to all the boroughs about the office, but also really to hear from the community in a new way, not necessarily just through the processes and complaints, but really so that the city and state could hear from the owners, operators, and residents, and to really get a holistic picture of what the Office of Nightlife can do for the city. But first I'll introduce myself. My name is Ariel Palitz. I am the Senior Executive Director of the first ever Mayor's Office of Nightlife. I'm a native New Yorker. I owned and operated my own nightclub in the East Village for 10 years called Sutra Lounge. I served on Community Board 3 on the liquor licensing committee for 6 years. And I also live above a bar, actually. So I like to say I'm here because I've been there. Again, last year, Rafael Espinal supported the legislation to create this office. And it was basically because the city recognized the importance of not only what nightlife contributes to the city, but the impacts of having a vibrant nightlife scene in the city. We are joining the rest of the world in a global movement of a new sort of nighttime management economy approach. There are almost 45 countries and cities around the world that have a nighttime management office similar to ours. And I'd like to say we're a little late to the party on this, and I think in large part a lot of the issues that have arisen because of having a vibrant nightlife is because of this void, that there was not a central point of contact between the city, the industry, the community boards, and all the city agencies and residents. And so this office is really meant to fill that void and to be able to take a look at all the city resources and the private and public community groups, and to make sure that everything is done in a more proactive, coordinated fashion that addresses those issues. In order to help quantify the value of the nighttime economy, our office, one of our first orders of business was to put an economic impact study together. We all know that nightlife is part of the city's identity and culture, but it's also a $35.1 billion industry for the city that supports nearly 300,000 jobs, as well as $700 million in tax revenue. And so it was important for us to be able to really communicate that. There's an 80-page economic impact study that also goes borough to borough that is on our website, nyc.gov/nightlife. Our approach is really to ensure that the industry is more vibrant, viable, safe, fair, and well-managed for all New Yorkers. We have a proactive management approach that focuses on coordination, education, support, and mediation. As a former community board member who sat in long meetings, I always felt that there was a need for a mediation approach, and to go in and to meet with the neighbors and the bar owners, and sometimes bringing in the police, the community boards, the DP, or whatever was necessary to help establish human contact, better communication, and resources and solutions. Because ultimately what people really just wanted was, you know, to be able to sleep better. Excuse me. So what you may have noticed also in our 5-borough listening tour was that I did invite all the city and state agencies on stage with me. The State Liquor Authority, police, fire, health, cultural affairs, oath, every agency that I could that had any nightlife oversight. What we've done since that town hall is we convene a regular, dedicated interagency working group every 6 to 8 weeks that reviews, revises, and discusses how these agencies can better interact with the industry, the community, as well as with each other to have a more coordinated effort. We also have broken down that interagency working group to focus on what we have found to be really the priorities of the industry and the community that we discovered through the town halls as well as through meetings like this. And those are, of course, quality of life for all, red tape and regulation, proportionate enforcement, safe spaces and social justice, as well as helping to support underground grassroots incubator cultural venues. And that has actually been a very positive thing. While we are not an enforcement agency or a reporting agency where people should call, I'm having complaints on every single venue, I think there's a lot of similarities, and I've heard at other community board meetings, well, we also, reach out to the police and the fire and the health, and we also do mediations, like what is the purpose of having an Office of Nightlife at all, really? And first of all, it's really, number one, another tool in the toolkit. We do meet with, we do get calls from community boards as well as police officers, elected officials, when there are urgent or chronic issues with a venue or with a neighbor, to see how we can help from our multi-agency support approach, which we call MASH. But we are also here to find and to identify the systemic problems from a more global perspective, things that are consistently a problem that we can try to find creative and new solutions for. So in the meantime, what we're doing is we're going on and meeting with all the community boards, venues, neighbors, hearing what the concerns are on a borough to borough, neighborhood to neighborhood perspective. And I know that we have gotten invitations to visit all of the community boards, all 59. But what we have found, because we are actually at this moment, as a very new and small office, we only have 4 people in our office right now, that the best use of our resources, rather than visiting the whole city and hearing what we know are patterns of problems, if you're having a specific issue with a specific venue or a specific neighbor that you feel that our seat at the mayor's office could assist through a multi-agency support approach, mediation, education, then we feel that that would be the best use of our resources, so that we can also use them as case studies and casework to eventually find new and better solutions. And this fall, we will be creating a recommendation report to the mayor on ideas and new approaches that we recommend to help elevate the nightlife industry, the way it relates to its community, to make improvements on how to coexist in order to respect this very important industry, as well as the need to be able to live peacefully and happily in the city. So that's essentially what we're doing. I also would like to just say in the fall, we'll also be introducing panels, workshops, and other resources to help guide venues to be better operators, better neighbors, and to support compliance through reinforcement. We really believe that the Office of Nightlife, one of our goals is to help operators be better operators and to help understand how to be better neighbors. And I think we can do it. So I appreciate your time here and inviting me. The last thing actually before I take questions is we also just launched our website, nyc.gov/nightlife, which I mentioned. A lot of what we heard from venue operators as well as elected city agencies, neighbors, was that there's just so many resources, so much information, so much guidelines that we really wanted to create a one-stop shop for everyone to be able to say, you know, I learned something great, or I need information about DOB, or how do I find my community board meeting, or who's my NCO, or where's my build-a-block, and you can all just go to one website, and it's continuing to build. So I encourage you and invite you all to visit the website and to please make recommendations to us as to what helpful information you think we can add to it. We also have a Facebook and an Instagram as well to really be able to communicate and stay in touch with the entire ecosystem of New York hospitality. And that's it. I am ready for your questions. Thank you very much. The website? I don't see.
The website is nyc.gov/nightlife.
Yes, so nyc.gov/nightlife.
So I'll open it up to questions, but I just want to, you said something about you're not going to be meeting with the 59 boards?
Well,
you're not going to be meeting with them individually, is that what you just said?
Yeah, I mean, again, we are an office of 4 people right now. I mean, ultimately, I really do hope to be able to prove the need, value, and worth of the office. I think everyone in this room could agree that having this central point of contact at the mayor's office is essential. I think in order to, and ultimately I would love to have a borough office, you know, a representative for each borough as well, and that's a goal. I think that the best use of time is to be able to hear from all the board district leaders and chairs and to communicate to us where and who and what are the issues and to focus that attention. Of course, if there is, again, chronic or urgent issue, I have and I will and I would meet with community boards. But I think in the interest of time and to be able to really focus our energies and to make real progress, we should focus. I think what I like to say is, again, because I sat on Community Board 3, in Manhattan, East Village, Chinatown, Little Italy, quite notorious for our long community board meetings and high temperatures. And also from the town halls, we know what the problems are, right? We all know what they are. I like to say, I'd like to move into #NowWhat. You know, we know that there are issues with sound. We know that there's issues with sometimes, you know, dirt and residue of nightlife on the streets. In fact, one thing I didn't mention is that we are currently working on a pilot program in the Lower East Side where we are using the corridor between Houston and Delancey, Ludlow and Orchard which everybody knows is quite a vibrant area. Again, it's a pilot program that's intended, if it works, to be able to distribute and use in all boroughs. But since I had a bar there, I know that community very well, and it's a very high temperature area. We are working with the Lower East Side bid the community board, the police department, Department of Transportation and Sanitation, as well as with the for-hire vehicle companies, to really have a coordinated effort on how to handle all the people that come in and come out. Similarly to like a parade, like we had the World Pride Parade, we're managed to have 5 million people walking down the street, and then the next morning nobody knows it's there. The city can coordinate all of its city resources to handle a large flux of people without a lot of disturbance. And so we are using these models. We've worked with Department of Transportation to change parking regulations in these narrow streets where there's parking on both sides and no cars can pull over, and so there's horn honking. We've got the resolution passed at Community Board 3 to support the changing of the parking regulations so that we could minimize horn honking, as well as to coordinate with the sanitation sweeper trucks to clean properly so that the next morning there isn't a reminder of what happened the night before. And that'll be happening very soon. Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yeah, just wanted to get clarification. Are you an advocate for the industry or the public or both?
I'm an advocate for New York.
Okay.
And we are the Office of Nightlife. And I think that what I'm an advocate for is to support a vibrant industry that also respects its neighbors. You can't have one without the other. You can't have a vibrant nightlife industry while there's also all of these mitigating factors. The goal is to have a coordinated effort to make sure that the industry, that is a huge economy for the city, our culture, our identity. It's also a place where marginalized communities, people from all over the world come here to be themselves, to find themselves. The LGBTQ community, people of color, everyone knows where to find their people in nightlife. People work during the day, but at night they find their people and they find safe spaces. We're also using these spaces for harm reduction resources in regards to drug use and many other things. Nightlife is not just about a drink and hanging out and partying. It is an entire community and culture and economy that needs attention and needs coordination that up until now it hasn't gotten.
Do you have any enforcement authority, or is it just advisory?
We are a non-enforcement agency. However, like I said, we do have all of the enforcement agencies working with us as we convene a dedicated interagency working group. Every 6 to 8 weeks, we meet with over 30 city agency representatives in person at one table, and then we also break it down into the subcommittees of harm reduction, social justice, quality of life, red tape and regulation, and then we have focus groups and we have co-designing meetings, and this is something that is getting the full attention and to look outside the box so that we can make improvements on how the industry and the community can coexist to respect the industry and the people.
Okay, one more question if I might, just one more. Do you report to the city council or directly to the mayor's office?
I do not report to City Council. We're the mayor's office. However, we work closely with City Council members, and it is a cooperative relationship. I think that everyone involved, whether it be City Council or Assembly or community boards, bids, police, everybody wants a solution. I think everyone's exhausted by this repetitive issues that don't seem to get better. And I think, what I have asked consistently is to give this office a chance and to work cooperatively, because I think that that's the best way that we can make progress in a short period of time, and to take the momentum of the interest of the office and to use it to do good.
Thank you.
Okay.
I can't hear you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. How closely do you work with SLA, the State Liquor Authority?
I mean, the SLA is at our table, at our interagency meeting. I speak with them on a regular basis when there are issues.
I think that's how we can be helpful to each other is if we can get to the SLA in some cases through your office. In most cases, they don't seem to respond to community boards other than when we approve or deny a liquor license. And in most cases, we do want to talk about a restaurant or a bar that is becoming a problem as opposed to when it actually was or is. So if your office can be helpful in that instance, that'd be great.
Well, I mean, I don't really speak to them regarding specific cases on a regular basis. And I think every sort of piece of the puzzle has its purpose.
But you are in talks with them often about strategies and whatnot?
We're talking about strategies and about finding systemic, holistic solutions to problems that exist. And again, we do have a recommendation report coming. We are in communication with the state, but they are their own entity. I do not have influence in a sense of being able to tell the SLA what to do. And I also don't want to have an abuse of power of that relationship to sway either for or against a venue. I think it's the purpose of the community board and the systems in place to communicate that.
Thank you.
So 9, then Kenny, and then Kiara. Okay.
I was just looking through your website and I saw just a few things that I wanted to ask you about. One, you suggest that neighbors with sound complaints go over to the establishment and ask them to lower the music. I know in my district where we've had issues with sound, the people who live in the adjoining buildings are not going to go over and ask a club owner or a DJ to lower the music. It's very intimidating.
Well, that's not exactly. What I mean is, and what we find very often is people call 311, the community boards, the police, but then, and they're also calling us as well, which is great. And then I ask, have you contacted the venue, right? And I say that because sometimes a venue cannot make the adjustments needed. I'm not saying to go at 3 in the morning, right, when you're in bed, but to make some sort of human outreach to the venue to let them know what you're experiencing, because sometimes, as I experienced at the community board, people don't even know there's complaints until they've got 1,000 calls against them, and now they're a problem location. I think the goal is just to make contact and to see if communication can be established in advance. But that's not the only recommendation, but reaching out to the venue is, I think, a good one.
Okay. I push 311 because it's important for us to track complaints, especially when the liquor license is up.
Yeah, of course. It's just one more tool. I think, again, ultimately the goal is to have it turned down and to sleep. And so I find that most bar owners or venue owners are also people that understand that there is a fine line between what I call torture and tolerance, right? We all have that. It's different for lots of people. It's not always what the DEP decibel allowable meter is. What is loud for me is different for someone else, and buildings and apartments are created differently. We work with DEP and venues if there's a chronic issue that doesn't seem to get better, to make a personal introduction, to just go in detail about what is bothering them and when. And then rather than just having a DEP reading outside the venue, to be able to have a reading inside the venue while the person is in their apartment, and to have them determine where is that decibel line between torture and tolerance. And then what we have recommended is that in the venue there is a live digital decibel reader. It sort of looks like a countdown clock like you saw in our video, where that line has been established, and the DJ as well as the manager can say, oh, we've hit, I'm pulling an arbitrary number out, 96. We know that at 97 she's going to start calling. So to have a visual sort of digital reference point. The goal is to make life better for the venue and the resident. And we're using the relationships with the agencies, new technologies, and more importantly, making sure that they have a relationship with each other before they start to hate each other.
Okay, I just have one more question. Also regarding sound, I know I saw on your website something about mediation between the neighbors and the establishment. Is that something that your office offers?
Yes.
So
And we
can reach
also
out
work
to
with
you.
the Peace Institute, which some of you may know. We also had them at our town hall meetings, which is a free service in each borough. The Peace Institute actually are the organization that trained the NCO officers. And sometimes venues and neighbors feel more comfortable with no city people involved, right? And just a neutral mediator. And so there are venues that we know of in Brooklyn where we have helped to establish communication up to a certain point, and then they go to this independent mediator. However, if there is, I think, because I was a former bar owner, former community board member, also have this position at the mayor's office, venue operators are very receptive to having the Office of Nightlife as they have been, by my experience, as well as the residents. And we have made progress in relationships that have lasted over 6 years without resolution. And they have been grateful that through that personal mediation and having that cell number and doing it in a way that is goal-driven to improve the relationship rather than to just shut it down.
Okay, we haven't had very receptive establishment owners in my district, but I'm glad they're receptive to your office. So
Yes.
if we do have problems, we'll be reaching
And that's
out
why it's
for-
another tool in the toolkit. Sometimes a community board approach for something is the right one. Sometimes it's the police. Sometimes it's the mayor's office. Sometimes it's DP. Sometimes it's everyone. Sometimes it's gotten to the point where we need to have a sit down and then have an agreement and have an understanding and make sure that everyone's being held accountable. And there's different levels and ways of doing that. And we are another tool for you in those situations where someone is not being receptive to get a friendly call from the mayor's office of Nightlife.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, I just have a question with which establishments fall under your purview? Is it like establishments that all have a liquor license?
Yes.
Or can it be, because in New York City we have gray lines where...
Could you speak a
hookah
little
lounge-
louder? I'm so sorry.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Kinda, yeah.
So my question was,
I'm an
is
old nightclub owner. I'm a little deaf.
which establishments fall under your purview? Is it only establishments with a liquor license, or in New York City we have a hookah lounge that may not have a liquor license but operates to the late hours. We have bowling alleys that go till late hours that have liquor on site. So what exactly falls in your purview for nightlife?
I think all of those that you mentioned, primarily they are liquor licensed establishments or those that stay open past in the late hours at night, right?
So even a pizza shop, like this is Manhattan, not the Bronx, but you
I
have
mean,
pizza shops
that
that
would be
attract the crowd.
That to me, a pizza shop that is having a major problem is an NYPD issue.
Okay.
An NCO officer. That is why the NCO officer program was established, the neighborhood coordinating officers. The Office of Nightlife going into a pizza shop doesn't make sense to me. If they had a bar and dim lights and a long line, but that's not really the right use of this resource. This is, maybe if there's a bowling alley with a bar, for sure, where there's security. We go in and we give, real recommendations. We go in and evaluate your security company. Is your security guard on his cell phone the whole time? Because that's a reactive security guard. That's not a proactive guard. Guards are there to prevent something from happening, not to just jump up and deal with it when it happens. That to me is bad security. And I'll go in there and tell them that. Do you have women security guards, right? I think all venues should have at least one female security guard on premise at all times for multiple reasons that we can all think of. So are your speakers in the right place? Do you have sound baffling curtains? Things like this that we can, little things that you've told them through your stipulations, I'm sure, but maybe didn't register or changed over time, or they didn't realize what the implication would be.
So, as a follow-up, is there a list of venues that, on your website, that
No.
is clear, just to answer his question? Because we do have a lot of hookah lounges that are coming up.
Right.
And a lot of different types of nightlife that's being, and social gatherings. So we just wanted to know, was there a clear list of what falls under?
Well, in the economic impact study that we have, there is a list of all the venues that are defined as nightlife.
Okay.
And so that includes sporting events, you know, bowling would count for something like that. Obviously, I think, you know, we all know nightlife when we see it without, you know, a list. But for example, if there's a hookah issue and it's multiple hookahs and nobody seems to be able to get it together, then maybe it's time for a hookah meeting with all of them together, with the police, with the community board, with the mayor's office. Let's establish what the rules are. Let's make sure they're distributed to them. Let's make sure they get it. Let's make sure they understand what the consequences are. Rather than going to all of them, consolidate, have a hookah meeting, and let's get to the bottom of it. And then those that don't operate have been warned.
Well, we appreciate that because we're getting a lot of, I wouldn't say they're venues, but we're getting a lot of different kinds of noise complaints. Because now you have parties on sidewalks and barbecues and hookahs and a whole bunch of things. So that it, for us, it's great to know what falls under your jurisdiction. But obviously, there are other issues that are coming up that create a nightlife that has to be addressed.
I mean, people have to follow the law. If they don't have an outdoor cafe license and they're doing parties outside, the police should definitely be notified. But, you know, I can call them directly and say, are you aware that you are operating outside of the law or outside of your steps? This is what they are, because again, we're non-enforcement. So I'm not here to call you and give you a ticket. I'm here to call you to tell you you're not doing something right. This is to help you get in line so that you can be a better neighbor, right? So when people say, oh, are you here just to, you know, support the industry? We're here to support the industry so that they can be better operators and neighbors, and therefore it all works out. But we also work directly with the residents as well. It's not, jeez, very handsy today. It's not one-sided, it's holistic.
Yeah, but I think that's part of the problem also, is that a lot of times it's when the venue closes and clients leave, that's when the noise escalates in a lot of cases. So when you go to the venue says, well, I really can't control that. But it's when they get in cars that the speakers go up and there's a lot of noise on departure, and the departure might not be immediate. The owner says, well, I can't control it, I want to stay left with the venue.
I mean, it's definitely a huge challenge. You know, I'll tell you as a former bar owner, when people leave and they're a block or two outside of your radius, at a certain point, there's only so much a bar owner can be a police officer, right? And that's why coordinated efforts with the police, with security companies, having a guard outside a little, like a half hour longer outside so that there's a presence, so that they're not opening up all their doors and turning their radio on and having their own party under other people's doors. We've all experienced that. It's a nightmare. But there has to be a proportionate amount of responsibility and expectation on what's feasible. And whatever the venue owner can't do, that's where the police do need to step in.
At what point does a new venue engage with you? At the point that they open, do they have to sort of engage with your office, or do you only come in at the point that there's a complaint?
No, I mean, I've gone into venues that are just in the earliest stages of construction.
Is it a requirement?
There's no requirement, no. There's no legislative requirement to contact the Office of Nightlife. But, you know, if there is a venue that's particularly large or worrisome for the board, I'm happy, and I have gone into a venue, and we start outside the venue, and I go, what do you see outside? How many windows do you see? Sometimes when it's a new owner, they're so concerned about what's going on inside, they don't even look outside their window to see what is the potential impacts. They don't understand until they've been in it for a year the importance of security and having your own post orders inside and being the head of your own security company, regardless if you hire one outside. So we're very, and those guidelines, again, these are casework so that on our website we can give a list of things so that you don't even have to call us, right? On our website, new owner guidelines. We're working, with the hospitality alliance and the police department. There's already a best practices booklet. We're working with them now on a new edition to expand that.
Anyone else? Did I miss anybody?
So in my district, we have a new lounge is opening up, and they're looking for letter of support from us.
Could you speak a little closer to the mic?
Yeah, there's a local business lounge looking to obtain a letter of support from us. What can you guys do to maybe provide us data, provide us background, provide us information to help us in determining whether or not to support this business?
I mean, I think that's the community board's role, and the members on the board is to determine operators. If I heard you correctly, you're asking me what the Office of Nightlife can do to help you determine whether you should support a license?
Correct. Yeah. Other than us visiting the establishment and speaking to the bar owners, do you guys provide data? Do you guys provide background on these owners?
You want me to give you a background check on this guy?
No, I mean, if you have existing, bar
I mean,
owners.
I hear kind of what you're saying, but, I think that by going to, the fact that you guys even go to visit the venue and meet with other operators, not all community boards do that, and I highly recommend that for all community boards to do, to get a sense of who the person is, what is their experience, have they done this before, is anybody on their team that has any experience, do they understand their role as a community member and not just a business owner. I would have a list of questions that I'm sure you already have that help you to determine that. And then make your recommendations there, making sure that the stipulations are there, that are in place, are realistic to the issues that you're concerned about, but also isn't suffocating the business as a setup for failure so that they ultimately wind up breaking the steps and being a bad operator. And then if they have, if there are concerns, then we're happy to step in and they can give us a call and I can ask questions and make sure they know what they're doing. But I wouldn't give you a blessing. Yeah, they seem like they know what they're doing, and then 3 weeks later, well, you said they were a good operator. There's tips and guidelines and instincts and experience on how to determine whether somebody or not should have the responsibility to gather hundreds of people with an alcohol license. But you can call our office and run something by me.
Okay, so.
And I'd be happy to talk to you
Give me 1
about it.
second, George, wait. So before George takes the mic, so do you have a tracking mechanism for the complaints that you receive? Is that going to be something that's going to be available on the website? First,
We
do you
don't
have it, and will it be available on the website?
We have a database of the casework that we do. It is not public information. We are not a reporting agency, and we are not an enforcement agency. And that is what 311, 911, and all the other agencies are for. This is a solution-based, supportive entity. And we do have data that we keep and track of all the cases and venues that we deal with.
Okay, thank you. George?
You kind of stole my thunder, Mara. So I was going to ask about metrics and what you do with that. One of the things I was also going to ask, with the data information, one of the things that I find as a community board that we deal with the state liquor authority is the casualness of which they give out liquor licenses, because we've had a number of establishments where the local precinct has come to us and said, don't support this place because it's the guy's cousin. Like the place shut down, and then somebody else within his network reapplied as a new owner, maybe changed the name from one thing to another by one digit or whatever, and then they reapplied, and the State Liquor Authority gave them the license. And the problem that we've encountered as a community board is that when we take these issues to committee, the precinct does not, they'll just give us the statistics, like all the crimes that happen there, but they will not weigh in as, please don't give them a liquor license, or don't do this. There's no, I guess they feel like they're not in a position to do that. You guys, as the advocate for both sides, is that something that you're willing to look at and consider doing? Because, again, in my district, we've had several establishments that have taken fatalities and stabbings, and yet the State Liquor Authority still will give them. I mean, in one instance, we actually had the State Liquor Authority write to us and said to us, please don't support this establishment. The community board then voted in support of this establishment, so we have to now write the letter. But is this a situation that you're looking at in terms of, oh, there's X amount of 311 complaints of noise for this place, there's X amount of responses from the NYPD in response to this, maybe this is something that going forward we're not going to be supportive of, and as a city we're actually taking an official stand that is recommending not to be supportive because of its past history?
I mean, I definitely hear the struggle there, and these are life and death matters, especially when people are getting stabbed and hurt and killed. The Office of Nightlife is not looking at individual cases per se to support or to deny. I think that is not our power to say, oh, we like this place and we think you should give. I think that's an abuse of power, in a sense, to be supporting or to denying something. I do think, if there are particular recommendations in regards to what I could share with the State Liquor Authority that you would like for them to be able to pay more closer attention to or to reconsider, I will communicate that for you. If there is a particularly egregious violent venue, the police need to be shutting that place down, and they have the resources to do that. The State Liquor Authority, in regards to this cousin, uncle, brother thing, their number one offense, even bigger than underage drinking, another is availing. To say that it's one owner but it's another owner. You can lose your liquor license just for that alone, for the reasons that you're saying. And to have an understanding of that law and to tell the State Liquor Authority this venue is availing, right? They do not have, the owners are not the actual owners. I just know that there's so many venues, like almost 20,000, 25,000 liquor licensed establishments citywide. To chime in and to have a personal opinion or an office opinion about each one and to try to persuade. Like if I called you guys every month and be like, well, I really like this bar and I don't like this bar, it's not my place. There's checks and balances all along the way. There's the community board, there's the police, there's the state, everybody has their role. Our role, once they are open, is to do our best to get them compliant and safe through education, mediation, support, reinforcement, and through the relationships we have at the city level, police, buildings, health, and to use that power to convene those agencies to direct to a problem to fix it. If we can't fix it, there are other agencies like the police and the SLA that are enforcement, not us.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I want to follow up on George's question, which I think is excellent and really goes to something that could be useful for the community boards and communities. And I understand where it's not your goal to go to State Liquor Authority and say, we support this application or we do not support this application. Could you see your way clear to doing the following? You say you do mediation. If you're called in for a mediation and it fails, can you see your way clear to say in a letter to State Liquor Authority, in this situation we were called in, we spent 2 or 3 months working on this. To date, a solution has eluded us. We have not been able to find a solution to the complaints. You're not saying support or not. You're reporting on your actions. Can you see your way clear to do something like that?
Well, I could look into that. From my understanding of what the mandate of this office is, again, we are not a reporting agency and we're not an enforcement agency. That has been made clear to me. I think that if I was working with a venue and they did prove to be a bad operator, listen, everybody even in the industry, right, who works and owns venues doesn't like a bad operator. The bad apple spoils the bunch, right? It gives everybody a bad name, and everybody works too hard to do the right thing, to have one venue, right, make it everybody look bad, and to put people in danger. And so we would do everything in our power to help set them straight and to make them understand the responsibility and the liabilities that they have and the ways to make improvements. And if they didn't, we would have that relationship and communication with you and with the police and with the other city agencies to tell them. I could tell the police, I'm from the mayor's office and I'm a city agency like the police and the buildings, and we can talk amongst ourselves. We can talk. To make a recommendation to the state, which is not out in our...
Not a recommendation.
Or any report whatsoever. Okay. I could look into...
That's the answer to the question.
I could look in... What the answer to the question is, I will speak to others. I am a representative of the mayor's office, but I can't answer a question like that right away, but I have my staff here, and we will see what is possible. We want to make sure that we're not abusing power either.
Okay. Ken?
Thank you very much. One of the things that I think might be potentially useful for us is, would you have the capacity to come into a venue and do a sort of comprehensive survey around compliance?
Yeah.
And then what I would like then is, would it be possible for you to report back to the community board any concerns, so that then follow-up is taken off your mantle and can then be a responsibility for us? That's one question. Another question is, do you see potentially a way forward where you might issue RFPs to make available to venues so that they can upgrade their facilities, maybe around code compliance, things like that?
Well, to answer your second question first, we're absolutely looking at ways to help mitigate the costs on a venue for sound proofing or other necessary upgrades to help to run a better bar or club. It's a big stretch, and it is something that we would like to be able to do, and we're exploring. I can't say if we can, but we are looking, as far as like these underground venues that like sort of like the non-compliant venues that we've seen like pop up in warehouses and stuff, the underground communities, like the ghost ship type things, that we are looking to, when venues don't have any money and they're just going rogue, how can we find pathways to legitimacy and financial support for those venues as well? But yeah, I mean, there are other cities in the country that have interesting models that we're looking at. But
so would you have the capacity to send staff in to do a compliance survey?
Again, we only have 3 people right now, but that's why I like to say, if you have a particular venue with a particular issue or concern that has proven itself to be a bad operator or not a good operator, or they're about to open, if we are able, yeah, I think we've done it before. We are doing that. We don't want to be overwhelmed with going to every single potential bar that's going to open. And then as far as reporting back to the community board about what, I see the relationship that we have as far as if there's a venue that is already open, and let's say you have called us, right? And you said, can you go visit this venue? And we go visit and we give guidelines. We would call you and tell you what we did. And then you would probably call me back and be like, it's 2 months later, it's worse. And then if I don't hear it back from you, it's better. You know, I'm not going to be calling them every week and be like, did you change your speakers? Did you do this? It's going to come out in the wash, you know, like, did it help? Are the complaints down? Are they, the goal is to make them not on the radar. Getting people from red flags to gold stars. They've made incredible improvements. If 2 or 3 months later you're like, we're still getting that, you know. And also I think it's important to recognize sometimes there are chronic neighbors that also like to weaponize the system and to abuse the 311 and abuse the community board and abuse the police and make hundreds of calls on a venue, even when there have been improvements. And so it's important to be able to make that distinction as well.
Well, I think that's everything. So I thank you very much for coming. If you can at some point provide us with, one, the link to your video as well as contact
The video's on our website.
Okay.
Sorry about those technical difficulties, but it's basically just saying, you know, we're here to help as another tool and to help the industry coexist with the community. I have business cards, which I'll leave at the front table, that you can get as my direct email and phone number on it. And feel free to email recommendations, call regarding venues, and maybe we can set up that hookah meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So that concludes that presentation. So I'll open it up for any announcements that any entity out here might have. I'll say that we have started the summer concert series at Orchard Beach. We had a very successful one this past Sunday, and next Sunday we will be having Tony Vega, among others. If there's any announcements from the agencies, any events that are coming up, please let us know. Anyone? Then that concludes our meeting. I thank you very much for your time, and see you next month. Have a great summer. Are we staying here?